presentations I did. One of them was the specifications presentation, and the other one was an internal presentation where we of research presented to the other members. So I have two parts in the presentation today. The first one, I will talk about the motivation of Coordicide on why it's important, why it's happened. So it's a really low level presentation today. We're not really going to go into the technical details because each small topic of Coordicide could easily take 2 hours to present really in a technical way, as you can see from your specifications videos on YouTube. And the second part of the presentation, I will talk a bit about the history of Coordicide on really how we progressed from the first steps we did take on this up to where we are now and where we want to achieve. So let me start, of course. The first part is the Coordicide project. So first I'm going to talk about the coordinator. Usually we have a misconception on the coordinator. Usually we see the coordinator as the really bad guy who wants the evil coordinator in the network, who is keeping us centralized, who is keeping network from working, and that we need to kill to make the network something free, decentralized for everyone. But this is a conception of the coordinator that is actually not entirely true. When IOTA was built upon a vision, and this vision was extremely hard to achieve, the coordinator allowed us to get time for developing this vision. The coordinator allowed us to have a consensus while we study on really how to make the best network possible. So when you think about the coordinator, actually, it's more like a good guy coordinator, the guy who is holding the network while we do the research, while we really check how we need to achieve what we need to achieve. So basically, he gives us consensus, he gives us security, and he gives us many things that when developing Coordicide, we realize that without him, it's a problem and we need to think about this. We came a long way on this. The Coordicide project, I believe, is 2 years old almost. So, well, it's a big thank you for the coordinator also for holding us all this time, but we still need to kill it. We still need to get to have this done, right? So when the question is why we want to remove the coordinator, we have 3 main reasons to remove the coordinator that we can say. The first one is responsibility. So IOTA Foundation is responsible for the tokens in some sense. So this goes against the principle we want to achieve with cryptocurrencies. We want to have freedom. We want people to be responsible for their own money. We just need to give them safety for this. So the idea is that right now we don't want to have no one responsible for your money. You should be responsible for your money, and that's one of the ideas we should have on the foundation. Of course, when thinking about IoT, thinking about the companies that are using it. Also, having a central entity on the network makes it not scalable, because everyone is connected to this. In some sense, you create a bandwidth problem that is capped by this guy. And the third one, of course, is decentralization. Basically, we want to have a decentralized network when, in some sense, everyone is equal up to some point at least. So the idea is that we should not have anyone that is controlling the network, but we all should control the network together. So advancing on this, the question is exactly how do we remove this guy? If this guy is doing so many stuff, this guy is being so important for us, how really we get there? And that's exactly what is the Coordicide project. But when you talk about the Coordicide project, of course, especially by the name, you think, well, it's just about turning off the coordinator, right? And the point is that it's not entirely true, this. Removing the coordinator is just the tip of the iceberg. So the point that Coordicide is about building the IOTA network, we could say building from scratch to get to use everything we learned, use everything we developed, everything we researched to achieve a network that is how it's meant to be. How we, let's say, to put our vision in a working solution. And the working part is extremely important here. Usually, when you talk about the vision of IOTA, we talk especially about 4 words that kind of define it. We want to be fast, secure, scalable, and decentralized, right? So I want to dissect a bit about those 4 words. But before doing this, I want to touch on the issue that we say about IoT versus IOP. So something we decided is that IOTA, especially Coordicide, it end product, it will be the standard protocol for IoT. But to get to IoT, we want first to get a network that is extremely good, that suffices the needs that we have from people. So the first version of Coordicide it will be made for IOP. And then from there, we focus on IoT. It's important to point that Coordicide is not one project that's going to end maybe on December. We're going to deliver and say we did it, and then you're going to go away. That's not true. It's an ever-evolving project that will go through many optimizations over time. So the first network, we want to achieve something big already, and from there we want to go every time greater and greater and greater. And then it's important to make this distinction because we made some changes, we made some trimming. Because of this, and we want to say, well, the first should suffice to every user using a good way, and also to some sense give you supply to our demand. But well, let's go then and talk about how we go to those forwards, how we get to fast, secure, scalable, and decentralized. So to go there, let's go word by word. Decentralized, of course, is easy, so we don't need to touch this issue. If you turn off the coordinator, if you don't make it have any central entity, we're going to be decentralized. Of course, we could always argue that there's always some level of centralization, but this holds true for every network. It's the same thing as saying that Bitcoin centralizes because we have big Bitcoin farms in China. It's not entirely true, but it's not entirely false also. As a mathematician, sometimes I fall on these vague parts. But well, we consider decentralized in the sense that we want to give a fair chance for everyone. Everyone should be equal, but of course, people who are contributing more to the network are also going to receive more for this. But no coordinator, no central entity that belongs on protocol level. So let's talk about fast, right? When I talk about fast, the question, what it means to be fast? So I want to go meaning. So, well, usually when you think about a fast network, we think about, I send a transaction there, I want to have it in a couple seconds done. It's confirmed, my money is there. I bought a coffee and the transaction should be confirmed before I drink my coffee. So basically, the speed we have in IOTA, especially compared maybe to blockchains, which is the common comparison that is made, is based on what we call continuous consensus. So the idea is that our continuous consensus means that if I send a transaction right now, I have one vision of it, but my neighbor and user on maybe Japan, maybe on Australia have a different vision on it. As time goes on, our vision of the network every time goes closer and closer and closer to achieve what we call consensus. But many people think that consensus is just a 0 or 1, which is not entirely true. We have let's say 2 visions that go merging to the past when it goes to the past. So the idea of really having a fast a transaction confirmed quickly depends on what confirmed means. And this belongs to what we call finality usually on this. But the question is, what we want to achieve on IOTA is that have the vision on a transaction, especially on the part of the tangle that this transaction belongs, be known by everyone and be, let's say, have the same vision by everyone in a fast way. Don't take a lot of seconds for this. And of course, this is something that is one of the most improvable parts of the protocol. Basically, we need to take what is slow and improve it. So this is something that we're going to achieve, something that is good already, but you're going to achieve something that is great in the later versions because this can be ever improved. Then the question is how fast you want the version of Coordicide to be. Again, I said this depends on finality. So I don't want to get into technical details, but where we're studying for finality on Coordicide, we have different grades of finality, and we have the simplest, the one I'm going to talk a bit about here today. And the simplest grades basically mean that either I didn't find a conflict on the time that the transaction takes to reach me, so there is no conflicting things there, or there was a conflict, but we choose between one of them and everything's okay. So we did a voting as we say. So when you talk about a guy that didn't really find a conflict, this guy is going to be approved in just a few seconds. The seconds is basically the time we take for the connections to the network to receive this information up to some point where really we can say, well, at least most of the network think that this guy is good and there is no problem. So this is going to take on some seconds, and this basically is most of the connections of the network. So in some sense, for most transactions we're going to have inside Coordicide, we expect to achieve on just some seconds grade 1 final. And then when you talk about something that has conflicts, then that's a problem, because then we need to do use the consensus mechanism, which is our voting scheme, which for the first version of Coordicide will be FPC, fast probabilistic consensus. And then this takes more time, so we expect to achieve between 2 and 3 minutes to have some result on this. And from this point on, from this point in time, from 2-3 minutes on, the transactions then we go every time having a stronger and stronger and stronger consensus, getting more grades of finality. We developed a system that goes up to grade 4 right now. We are still developing it, so I'm not really going to talk too much about it, because it's a research that we finalized not so long ago, finding a good finality method that works well for the network. But basically, that's how things go. So, as I said, the time you need to wait, how fast is your transaction depends on the level of security you need. So maybe if I'm going to buy a coffee, just waiting for some seconds is enough. But maybe if I'm going to make a big purchase that maybe could have someone trying to attack me, maybe it's better to wait some time, some minutes. But we don't expect really this never to go over some minutes. It's never going to get any higher than this, even if you talk about really important high value transactions. Well, next step, right? Secure. We want the network to be secure. And then what does it mean to be secure, right? So what it means to be secure, people usually, against maybe the misconception, think about being secure means that it's impossible to have someone doing something malicious in the network. And that's not true at all. That's not true in any network. Every network has a rule of security, and every security is probabilistic security in general. So this means that you have a low chance of being succeeding in your attack. So the point about security is not really about making things impossible, because making things impossible, there's a good phrase usually so people always, that the best is the enemy of the good. So, sorry, the perfect is the enemy of the good. So the idea is that if you try to make something impossible, you're not going to achieve it, and you're probably going to break other things together. So the idea is on security is making an attack extremely expensive, extremely difficult to succeed. So this would mean that someone who tries to gain something by an attack would lose much, much more most of the time, or maybe all the time. This would make us secure, because not only this breaks motivation, but this basically, it depends on how low the probability is, or how expensive it is to perform an attack. This becomes impossible in a practical way, but not in a theoretical way. So when you talk about malicious behaviors, usually I like to point 2 kinds of malicious behaviors. They are the ones that I think that summarize the possible attacks on the network, which would be consensus attacks and communication attacks. They are extremely different in the sense that consensus attack in general try to make a double spend, try to make get money using the protocol. And communication attacks, they try to slow down the network. They try to break the network in some way. So basically, when you talk about consensus attacks, double spending, the mechanism on Coordicide that takes care of this is exactly our voting scheme that we call the fast probabilistic consensus, or FPC. So this basically is a really smart development that we had from Sergey that makes us use random thresholds on random queries, and this makes it impossible for someone to predict. It's really, really nice how really this has Byzantine resistance. So, but well, let's move on. And then we have the second, that is communication attacks. Communication attacks, it has many different kinds. We have spam attacks, that's right, to break communication by sending more than what nodes can process. Eclipse attacks, that's right, to get all your communication channels so they can create fake visions of the tangle. CBO attacks, that's right, to create many identities that are actually the same person, so they get more by having more. So we have many different, I would say, modules that take care of those things. Especially, I would say we have rate and congestion control. We have auto peering, and then we have also mana. So usually I would put those three as the models for Coordicide that takes care of communication problems to have. Mana is not directly taking care of communication, but it takes care of CBO, because someone cannot really do harm in the network by creating many identities. Well, moving on, then we have scalability. So we want the network to be scalable. Scalable is, I think, is the most difficult term to define here. So the question first, what is something to be scalable? So I'm giving here some personal definitions, so please don't go to Wikipedia to check them because they are maybe wrong. But the hard meaning to scalable is that the network should be usable by an unlimited number of users. And then someone's going to say, well, that's too hard of a definition. That's too hard of a meaning, right? Because a limited number of users mean infinite people can use, and that's not entirely true. And then I say, yes, you're right. When I say here unlimited numbers, of course, it goes up to the limits that we have on connections. But in general, the protocol itself should not have problem on this and should adjust to this. Then let's go to the soft meaning. Soft meaning is, instead of having a limited number of users, let's say the network should fill the current and future demand. Of course, with future demand, we maybe need to increase what is our capacity for this. But in general, that's an easier way. But when you go to say this in a few words, I would say, well, in a few words, what the first version of Coordicide should do is that it should work being able to process a large number of transactions per second. So of course, when you look at the current coordinator network, for many different reasons, is not really doing a good job on this. It's not really achieving a large number of confirmed transactions per second. I want to make a point here that I said confirmed transactions per second for the coordinator network, and I say only transactions per second on the Coordicide network, because a change we did on the Coordicide network that was moving away from random walks and using a simpler tip selection also means that you should have almost all transactions confirmed if they are honest. So we have little transactions being dropped or left behind. This makes basically, if you want to make a separation between TPS and CTPS, the separation is not really going to see much difference. But the idea is exactly this. So the first version, we want to basically have a large number of transactions per second being processed without many problems. And then which number we are talking about when we talk large, right? And being more vague and vague. No. We don't have official numbers, of course. This is a discussion we have an objective. But in general, when we talk what do we want to achieve, we say, well, we want the first version of Coordicide network to be able to process at least 1,000 transactions per second. And this happens because we also have a demand for 1,000 transactions per second. As I was told many times, we have companies, they are ready to use the network, but they say, well, that's simple, I want to use it. I just need 100, 200 TPS. So we need to, as I said before, being able to supply the current demand and also have spare room for growth. And then from there, we're gonna improve more and more and more. This is another number that we can identify bottlenecks and improve bottlenecks between versions. So this number is expected to grow over time. And if we reach a point when you say, well, we cannot do anything more, we are on our, let's say, cap on TPS you can achieve on a protocol level, then we also gonna have what we call sharding mechanisms that is being currently developed. Actually, say current developed is a bit of a lie here. Let's say we had the many discussions about this. In all the meetings we had discussions about this, but we still don't have a group focusing on this because this is supposed to go for the second version of Coordicide. And now we are focusing all our resources to be able to achieve the first version in a great way. So we have good ideas, good discussions. We have even a math paper being spec'd out. But the point is that this is going to be fully researched and solve all the problems on it later. We don't have an official name for it yet. We are moving between slicing and atlas, since it does make sense on our approach, but I'm going to keep a mystery because I cannot say anything about this. But the point is that we have some really smart ideas going around about this, and I'm really excited after the first version go out to be able to work on these things. And well, of course, we have many things to do. We came a long way. So the question is, are we late? What about time? So I would first like to say that I even checked the roadmap for this, and the IOTA roadmap ended up being really accurate on how we are developing things. So being able to participate in the research things, I would say that most of us already finished it or are about to finish all the research questions we have. So we are really, really close to achieving, let's say, to say we are done and now we need to write and we now need to basically iterate with the engineering team to have everything well right and for someone to be able to code it. So yeah, we are already writing specifications and it's going really well. For me, this is really exciting to say because being on this project for so long, we achieved something. We really go sometimes to the calls and say, well, what questions I have left? And we don't have almost questions left. And we would say, well, then we went to how we want to structure our specifications to people for working on it. And I think it's something really nice, and I'm really proud to be part of the project and have been coming so long on this. But well, I just want to say to you guys that time is going well. Specifications actually are going even on a faster pace than expected, I would say. So I would expect good news to go on every of those research summaries that we do every month. Then the first break is here. I talk a bit about the project, the motivation, and how we got here. So if you guys want to ask something, please feel free. Then we continue for the second part.
Okay, Darcy. So far I have 3 questions. The first one says, how do you define needed security of a transaction?
Needed security of a transaction? Well, depend on, of course, which kind of malicious behavior we are talking about. So, for example, when you talk about double spendings or someone being able to censor a transaction, usually those are the main malicious behaviors we think about. We think on how much computational power, which percent of the network someone should have to be able to influence your transaction after it reaches a certain grade of finality. So, for example, if I gave those seconds for you guys, the question is how much resources I need to be able to check this. And right now we are really writing the math on this. We have 3 people that are working on getting this math done. But in general, it's extremely difficult to really change your transaction from maybe like it to dislike it, or to make a double spending happen is virtually impossible. But to censor your transaction should be possible, but it's too expensive. So the guy don't get anything from it. It just gets your transaction to be left behind, but then you just send it again, and the guy will spend a lot of resources, and you just spend one transaction of resources. So when you say of this malicious behavior, I can think of those 2, and I don't think we have any problems on, at least on this side. The problem that we cannot control is the DOS. When a node is attacked, this is a communication attack. But the DDoS is exactly the reason when you have grade 1 and grade 2 finalities actually. The grade 1 finality is you are secure if you are not DDoSed. And the grade 2 is you are secure even if you are DDoSed. Because we are taking into account different waiting times that we may have because of attacks of this kind.
Okay, so a follow-up question is, will there be a possibility to restart the coordinator once it is killed?
Well, in theory, yes, but you would have different, how can I say, would have different works to do. Because the idea is that if I want to restart the coordinator, it's simple. I just plug a node, call it coordinator, and it's there. But the question is then I need to have everyone change their consensus mechanism from using voting and things like this to say, now, this guy gonna issue some special transactions and you follow it. And on a protocol level, this is not difficult to do, because if you read about the payloads that we are doing, we can make a special payload type called the milestone. that is only issuable by the coordinator, and then we could run the current network, IOTA network inside the IOTA network, let's say the Coordicide IOTA network. And it's funny because you can run both at the same time. Suppose you have a small subgroup of nodes that you want to run their own network on a coordinator way. They could do this because of the payloads that are being developed. So the idea is not hard. We just need to have everyone agree that they need now to follow back the coordinator if you want it. But I don't think it's going to really be a problem.
Yeah, I hope it's not a problem. So the next question is if it's gonna be possible for authorities or providers to block the protocol, IOTA protocol, in the future. I don't know. I don't know how.
I think it's this question. It is not really on my scope.
Yeah,
let's say.
I
don't know how to answer.
Okay.
The question is how. I mean, on a legal way, of course they could do, but it's impossible to control. It's like a country, I think, banning Bitcoin. If you have internet connection, you can do it. I don't see how it can be done.
It's okay. It's a bit out of scope. So let's go on with the follow-up question, which says, will Coordicide be implemented step by step or all in one? The 4 steps all in one.
The test net is going step by step, as you can see. That's already called the alpha net for now. It's going to be a test net in some weeks. But basically, when we talk about the Coordicide, I believe everything on version 1 is coded together. But we have different people coding different parts, and then you're going to get everything together. That goes on how we are doing our specifications, actually. So the way we decided to do it is basically that we have too many modules to be coded. So we have different researchers responsible for different parts of the specifications, and they all have also an engineer associated. And the engineer goes basically giving feedback back and forth. At some point says, okay, it's great now, I can code it. And then they're gonna code, discuss internally, and gets product on. So the first version is not going by parts, it's being developed by parts by research in the sense of writing specifications. But in the end, we're going to get all the parts together on a first version of Coordicide. The testnet is being listed part by parts to check, to also provide us with information and to check if you don't have any problems going on. At least that's how things are going.
Okay. So I'm just getting a lot of questions right now, you know.
Oh boy.
So I'm trying to gather all of them. So the next one says, what is the difference between Atlas and sharding? Maybe he meant slicing. I don't know.
Actually, we just didn't decide. We just didn't decide on the name. They are the sex. We have one idea for sharding mechanism, but this idea I'm not supposed to talk about it. So because we are completely free to talk about what we develop, but it's something that we don't really research seriously. So I don't want to give information and then later have someone say, hey, Darcy said this, but actually we still are gonna work on this, right? So what I can say that we are deciding between slicing, Atlas, or maybe other names for this. But then that's going to be our sharding mechanism, and it's going to be cool after we have something out on this. So sorry if I cannot answer more now.
So this one, I think it's a bit redundant, but I'm going to do it anyway. Sure. Once the coordinator is gone, what provisions are there in the protocol to help in case of funds stolen through bugs or hacks? Maybe we'll, no, actually we didn't. We didn't address this with the other one. I don't know if maybe it is a bit out of scope for your talk. I don't know.
I mean, it's a bit in the sense that we never really can predict things that can happen, but we always can find a smart ways to have solution. I think something that is clear, again, I go back on the payloads, but I think something that's clear that we have so much options on payloads that we have much more freedom to find solutions if something that is really out of our minds happen. So basically, we could always issue a certain snapshot and then do something from there. But I really cannot think on let's say on a button that you say, well, now we have a problem, press the button and everything's gone. Yeah, this is also something that can happen on basically, let's say, on any decentralized network we would have the same risk. But I don't think it's a risk, to be honest.
So I'm gonna do no, two more questions, and then you
Sure.
can continue. So the other one says, what's the point of storing transactions on a DAG in the presence of FPC?
Storing transactions, the principal FPC.
Yeah, that is the question. What's the point of storing?
Okay, sure. Then this question goes because transactions are not transactions. So transactions, now we even changed the names. They call it messages.
Yeah.
The Tango does not only have utility when you think about ledger state and tokens and everything. It works as many different applications that can run on top of it. It's also data applications and things. And actually, you can run so many different kinds of things using the payload messages structure. That basically is not only transactions, but again, we're gonna always have snapshots that can happen, and the node can control snapshot. If you say, well, after transaction is on FPC, I want to do a snapshot on it, you can do it. But again, being after FPC is grade 2 final, and we have a minimum time that we suggest for snapshots. That is grade 4 final. It's the final grade of finality. So maybe I'm going to write an IOTA Cafe post about this so you guys can understand more about the finality grades we are talking about. But grade 4 final really means no one can change the past of a transaction. And that point on, which should be, I guess, around days old, you can erase the transaction and just keep ledger state. But of course, this if you don't mind the data going away, because again, the Tango is not only about value, guys. It's also about the data and many other applications that can go on top of it. I hope this answers the question.
Yeah, me too. So let's do one more, and then you can resume. So this one says, how does IOTA Foundation decide when it's time to kill the coordinator? You can test for a week, month, year, but how do you decide when it's time to do to give the big step?
Well, I guess when the Coordicide network's done, we're gonna have a button there, and then we're gonna ask who wants to press the button. No, I mean, jokes aside, we always had this question, like, who is gonna be the one to press the button? And at the time, I even said, well, I pressed the button. There's no problem. We can never do something thinking that's gonna have a problem, especially with all the procedures we are doing. Our security procedures are great. We really think about all the possible problems. We also going to have a spec out problems phase. We're going to have communities being able also to try to find problems and getting tokens from this. If you look at the whole map, really, I mean, the security part is really good. If we really, I at least I'm going to say on my part, but I don't think the project will fail. I don't think the project will go on and have a problem. I think the things we developed on it are robust enough to really, if you find some problem, it's going to be small and we can solve it. I don't think we're going to find big problems. But yeah, we don't have a fixed time in the sense that, on 21 of December of 2020, we're going to press the button. We don't have this. We're going to finish the network. Every one of the security protocols are going to be followed. After everything from security is followed, then we can say, well, it's time to turn it on. And we are not really going to be holding on this because something we want to do. It's our project after all. We came a long way on this.
Okay, so that's it for now. If you want to continue, guys, if I missed some question, please submit the question again on the chat.
Well, then let's go on. And now I'm going to talk a bit about the history of IOTA Foundation, right? So I'm going to talk about not a IOTA Foundation research history, but I'm going to talk about the research group history. So this is based on the internal presentation I did for the IOTA Foundation's members. So many people already saw this, but let's go on. So I think when I talk about Coordicide, it starts on the very first research summit that happened in 2019 in Barcelona. So this happened 6 months after the whole foundation meet on what they call SumSum, or yearly event where everyone gets together, which Corona now is making not possible. But basically, this research summit was the first time the research was a research focused meeting. And this was really good. So the team got together, and we for 1 week were discussing day after day, nights after nights on really how we gonna go regarding Coordicide, how we're gonna move from the coordinator to Coordicide. And basically, the first thing that we got there was, of course, one thing we got there was restructuring the research department. The research department now was mainly separated into, I would say, branches. There was two groups, the Coordicide group and the attack analysis group. The Coordicide group, of course, would develop the basic things for Coordicide, and the attack analysis groups was the one responsible to studying the possible attacks that Tango could suffer. This also on the coordinator presence, but also for Coordicide. They went moving from one to the other. Well, the results for this first research meeting was the first Coordicide white paper that was out, I believe, over 1 year ago. So, well, then moving on, we had two big decisions that were made on basically that meeting. The first one was about the voting scheme. We would replace the random walk by a voting scheme. Sometimes there are questions, why replace the random walk? Because the random walk has some small vulnerabilities that are extremely difficult to go over without the coordinator. Especially because if someone makes a conflict in the random walk, it's true that we're not going to have double spans. One branch will grow, the other branch will die. But the problem is that using only one transaction, one malicious actor was able to kill a branch. So there, again, when I say about security, on something should be expensive, should be much more expensive on what he gets. This is not possible with the random walk being the one doing consensus. Because on one transaction, the guy may drop 1,000 transactions, and then someone could spam conflicts, and then the number of confirmed transactions per second would be really low. So we had to move away from really the random walk if you want to, let's say, turn off the coordinator. And the idea we came up on what to do, let's say after many discussions, was to use exactly a voting scheme. We had two big voting schemes. One was the fast probabilistic consensus. This one was internally developed by Sergei Popov. We have a mathematical paper on this on our website. Please check it out. And then we have the cellular automata, which even though it's external, it has many good properties and is studied really well by the academia. So we decided to, well, let's check which one of those two is the best to go. So we didn't really, we proceeded with both, doing research on both to see really which one we could use. The second thing we decided there is actually on the existence of mana. Mana, as it's saying here, it's a virtual token that has no monetary value, and it's given to users. I mean, at least let's say this is an initial thinking of mana based on the contribution of the network. The current idea of mana, everyone can see on the presentations again, is that mana is generated by tokens that are on the addresses. And every time this address is used, then it goes moved to some node of his preference. And in standard, the issuer node of the transaction. But basically, those are two main things we decided there. And then we moved forward to the second meeting we had that was exactly on the Samsung, as that I talk now, but the other one on Travemunde. Well, the meeting on Travemunde, it happened 1 week before actually the rest of the foundation got there, so we could have 1 full week of research, really motivating, especially since there was a beach around and we couldn't go. But basically, the idea was how to move from the newborn white paper from the working Coordicide network, a working Coordicide solution. So of course, we discussed it a lot and realized something that maybe is not obvious at first, that the research meetings are extremely important and productive. Having the researchers face-to-face was much more, we could get much more done on research level than just having everyone meeting by calls. And so it was really good. We get a lot of things this. We decided, we checked on what it was needed to have to develop Coordicide, and then we split. We made a new organization on the things instead of having two things. That's as I said in some slides ago. We split more the team on groups. Sorry, split more the research, IF research on groups that would fit our current needs. So more specialized groups. And the third big thing we got from there is that we decided that we would develop a prototype, especially, and well, which is actually the Go Shimmer network nowadays, the AlphaNet of Coordicide. Well, talking a bit about those groups, basically the specialized groups we decided were 5 at that time, which is the prototype, the rate control, the FPC, the cellular automata and auto peering, and the protocol group. So I'm going to talk a bit about one of the groups on what were their, let's say, objective on this. The prototype group, of course, was supposed to write a first version of the network, the AlphaNet, on the Go programming language. Actually, it was really not meant to be in Go in the sense that we decided this there. What happens is that Hans code faster than we can think. And then Hans had the ready things done in Go. And then it was a good opportunity to go forward with this. Basically, from the development of the prototype, we also would be able to get many feedbacks and things that we could understand better, work better together, and see things we could change. So it works also providing information for us. The second group, rate control, would find solutions on really how many transactions a node could send for the network. And basically, not only how many he can send in the sense that spam, but also in the sense of congestion. Something that we came to realize much later, that we have two different network problems that we call rate control and we call congestion control. And while rate control looks at someone who is maliciously trying to send too many transactions, congestion control checks when maybe no one is really trying to send too many transactions, but the whole network cannot really hold how many transactions are going around. So there are two different problems that evolved from this group. I'm gonna touch this again later, but that's basically how it is. The work is heavily related to node identities and mana, since if you have bandwidth is a limited resource. Limited resources should be also split according to something on maybe how good the node is for the network. And that's a measure exactly of mana, how it's contributing. At the same time, something that is always clear that we don't want someone who has a low quantity of mana to not use the network. Everyone will be able to use the network. We just have some different adjustments that happen on some special cases, especially on congestion. The third group is the FPC group, the Fast Probability Consensus. Of course, it was supposed to further develop the voting scheme and adapt it for the needs of Coordicide. And again, one of the major challenges of the group was to study how robust FPC is against attackers. So in some sense, this group was an evolution of the attack analysis group. It got its mission and was checking on studying how to, let's say, how FPC answers to possible consensus attacks as Byzantine generals. Cellular automata and auto peering. The check on the auto peering, of course. Auto peering has two phases. One of them we call peer discovery, when you just join the network. How I can find someone to, let's say, to link together, to connect to. And the second one is about having a network that don't have a topology that can be completely seen by someone or can be used against someone. So the idea is having the network topology changing in a random way over time, so no one really can use the network as an attack vector. These are really good protection against eclipsing attacks, for example. And second mission of this group was to study cellular automata, which was the competitor of FPC. As you can see in nowadays groups, cellular automata was decided to be left behind. The idea on this is actually because cellular automata has some security problems that need two troublesome solutions to work. We have solutions for basically all the problems it has, but the idea is that implementing the solutions and studying the solutions to see if they don't have any vulnerability will take too much resources. So one of the reasons we stick to FPC, and I'm actually pretty happy on how things are turning out on FPC. So that's another reason. Finally, protocol will decide whenever it's left. So we have many things on protocol level that this group should be the one dealing with. Timestamping, tip selection, validation, finality came from this group. From this group also we are checking today the node processing. So basically this group was dealing with those protocol level or protocol questions that don't fit to the other groups especially. Many of our researches was actually used on the project Chrysalis, that is the IOTA 1.5 one. That is improvements on the coordinator network in a way that we can improve the current network using Coordicide ideas, and then it can hold much, much better until we finalize Coordicide version 1. And then From there, we had other meetings, other episodes, let's say. We started to have bi-monthly meetings where we call the Coordicide summits. Basically, they were especially made to develop Coordicide further and further. They were extremely good. So we passed by many countries. We went there around the world, basically to work on this. It was really nice. I guess I only haven't been on one of those. The second one in Poland. I don't know how to say the name of that city. But it was actually great. We developed many things. We came a long way. As I told, I don't want to go over this again, but they were really good meetings. We were able to develop the project a lot. Bursam, especially the Berlin Summit, we had many changes in the way that we say, well, now we are nearing the end line of Coordicide research. So what needs to change? What needs to be done? So of course, it was there that we decided that we would be dropping FPC to have, we would be dropping CA to have FPC. Also, because of this, the group that was working on CA also changed to be working on MANA, on how MANA impacted the other components. So we changed it from the CA auto-peering to the MANA peering group. Also, we realized that we had a big problem that deserved to have its own team. That was the decentralized random number generator. The idea is really how we can have the network agree on a random number that is decentralized. So this question, actually, we even had some external resources invested on this. So basically it was big, it was needed. So we had a group working on this. And then again, as I told you guys, the rate control group, it was not only dealing with rate control, but also dealing with congestion. So let's change it for the networking group. And then this became the structure of groups that we had after BIRSA: prototype, networking, FPC, DRNG, MANA peering, protocol. Actually, we call the prototype group usually Go-Shimmer group. But yeah, basically those are the ones. Finally, the last summit we had, since the other ones got canceled due to the Corona situation, was the LISAM in Lisbon. Basically, we decided there on many important structures that would be changed, like transaction layout, the payloads idea, everything came from there. We discussed further our sharding solution also. And then we had a long discussion with the engineering team on really how would our cooperation go together to write specifications and to code specifications. That's when we decided everything. And that's where we are now, basically. The specifications are being written. That's great. This means that soon we're going to have something. Let's say, of course, we are already showing things week by week or month by month for you guys, but basically specifications done. We're gonna get iterated over with the engineering team, so they say it's good for coding now, everything's great, don't have any problems, and the end result of this is gonna be the Coordicide yellow paper. So I don't think this is gonna take too long actually to happen because the specifications are going on a faster pace than what I predicted. So I hope I can show you guys our yellow paper soon enough. And thank you, everyone. Now questions.
Okay, thanks a lot, Darcy. That was amazing. So I only have two questions, but already we have another one on the chat. So I'm gonna do the ones I have. So the first one actually is mine, and it says, why did you guys abandon a mixed consensus based on FPC and cellular automata?
I like a lot this consensus mechanism, but we have some small problems on CA that basically has two hard solutions. Like we even went on Ising models from physics to be able to solve this thing there, so you can take how really problematic it was. And also CA was much less studied in the sense of Byzantine actions than FPC was. So the point is that we didn't abandon CA. That's something that should be clear here. We are delaying CA. CA is going to be studied between version 1 and version 2 of Coordicide, and we want to solve all these issues that has on analyzing Byzantine attackers, so we can get everything solved, and then we can maybe go back on this mix. The idea is that if you want to have something done soon, it was better to focus on FPC than to really wait for CA to be done. The idea is a bit on, I want to have a network ready that is good enough. and FPC is good enough for this. But CA is more appropriate for IoT, especially because CA is much quicker than FPC to reach some result. So we didn't abandon CA. Maybe we're gonna have a way for them to coexist in the future, but are we only gonna have a answer on really how we're gonna do this after the first version of Coordicide is out.
Okay, so the next one says, are your research results regarding Coordicide always reviewed and confirmed by other actors such as research council, universities, or other experts? So basically, if you guys do some sort of peer review or something like that.
Oh, well, that's a good question, actually. We have some articles that are out, we have some conferences that we participate. So when this is possible, we develop and go through. I believe we have 2 to 3 articles that are being written right now, but this is not the focus. The focus is having the network done. It's nice when you have something that we can take it out. We have this done from one of our researchers for version 2 of Coordicide, which is VDFs. That we hope that it can replace proof of work in a way that is much less gameable, much less exploitable. And this went to be on paper for us. We have also studies being doing about rate and congestion control, especially since we have a cooperation on AIMD, which is a famous algorithm. So basically, we get those things out, but we don't say, well, I'm going to write a paper, do the development to write a paper, to write an article. This is a side product that we appreciate to have validation, but we have great minds. We have many professors. We have a research council. The internal validation is good, and we believe that external validation, when they happen, is good too. I don't think we find any problems on this on a peer review level.
Okay.
I hope this answers.
Okay, so I'm getting a lot of questions now. The next one says, can payloads freely be defined by anyone?
Yes, but if I define a payload, but you don't want to use the payload, you can just process the transaction as a data transaction. Message, let's use message, which is the new term. You can only process the message as a data message. The idea is that we have a part on the processing that is the payload identification. If you identify a payload type that you're not supporting, you can just ignore it and just process as data. And then if you want to process it as a payload type, then you have the special module that it comes from the person who developed that payload, that then you process it's basically another level. We have some payloads that are on protocol level. We say everyone should have, which also goes, everything needs for FPC, everything needs for basically value transactions and things like this. We also are developing some payloads to be able to report malicious behavior with proof. And from there, we can basically maybe have punitions or done based on this. But this is also on development, so at least the question is yes, but we only process payloads if you also are using that payload type.
Okay, so I got a lot of questions on mana.
Sure.
Let me try to organize this, because the first one is like too wide. It's just, what's the goal with mana? I'm gonna do you 3 questions on mana, and maybe you can elaborate. So the first one is like very general. What's the goal with mana? The other one says, how are users going to get mana, and what are the reasons for losing mana? The other one says, does heavier nodes need more mana to be trusted? I don't know what he means by heavier. Maybe it's regarding the
maybe
amount.
Richer.
Yeah.
Maybe richer. Well, okay. I can talk a bit about this. What was the first question again? I forgot the wording.
The first question is just what is the goal with mana?
Okay, goal. I was forgetting this word. Thank you. So the goal of mana is basically, well, the original goal of mana is Sybil protection. Basically, we have some things that someone could make 1 billion nodes. And with 1 billion nodes, you could try to impact the network in many ways. Well, the first idea of mana is make that it's not really good for the person to make 1 billion nodes, because it's not going to get impact. The idea is that since mana is used on many different parts of the network, if the guy has some mana that comes from somewhere, if it has 1 billion nodes, he would maybe split this mana on 1 billion nodes, and then they would not be more impactful. So the first thing is CB protection, protect the network against, let's say, people who are making too many identities and try to do something on this. So that's the first goal. But Mana is also used in some sense to define which nodes are more trustable. You don't get a lot more to having more Mana. It's not like, oh, I have half the Mana of the network, now I can do whenever you want. It's not true. Mana influences that your opinion is more important, but you cannot do a double spending if you have more Mana. Mana basically gets your opinion to be more important, but you need to decide only on one, that's for sure. Mana also gives you a bit more resources when we are on congestion. So basically, we have some, you can issue more transactions, but at some point, having more Mana also means that you need more transactions. So it's a, let's say, a payoff on this. So I think those are I would say, the main goals of Mana and the motivations of Mana that we had. Second one is, how can a node gain Mana? So if you basically, well, if you can think of node in two ways. You can think, for example, as a public node that other people use, and you can think of node as I made a node and I'm using it. If I made a node and I'm using it, the way you get Mana is simple. You just need to have tokens. If you have tokens, they're going to be generating Mana. And then when you issue a transaction with using those tokens, then this Mana is pledged to your node, and then you get that Mana. That's the simplest way. If I am a public node, unless the users that are using me, they want to give their Mana to someone else because they can do this, by standard, I get the Mana that is being pledged by those transactions. So in general, a public node, for most transactions, since most people won't really care about where their Mana is going, for public nodes, they should naturally gain Mana by basically issuing transactions for other people. Okay. Those would be the...
There is a second part to that question, because he also asked, well, what are the reasons to lose Mana? You know?
True. So the reasons to lose Mana, right now, the way we are developing for the first version, we don't have punishments on Mana. We have punishments on connections. I maybe disconnect from someone if they do something that is violating something. But the only way you lose Mana right now is over time. Mana has a decay factor. So it's basically Mana that is not being used at decays. That's the point. We have been dealing with some, let's say, numbers that we've been thinking about Mana having a half-life of 6 hours. So it's not decay fast enough, such that someone, I need to send transaction every hour. No. But at the same time, it's not slow enough, so someone can try to accumulate a lot of Mana. Okay. So those are the things we're saying. But we have discussions that are not really a lot of them, but we have some discussions on punishments based on Mana. But I believe if they're going to be implemented, it's going to be between version 1 and version 2.
Okay. So, well, the follow-up question is regarding the version 1, and it says, is Coordicide version 1 still partition tolerant? I don't know if this is your scope.
Yes, a bit out of my scope.
No problem.
I want to know how to answer the question. I'm sorry.
No problem. So let's move on to the other question that says, can you elaborate on the yellow paper a little bit more?
Sure. Sorry, to finish the question.
Yeah, it says, no, it is not who. How is it going to differ from the white paper or other papers? So basically, what is the difference between the yellow paper and the white paper?
The yellow paper, it has different target public, basically. While the white paper has the generality on how things goes, the yellow paper is made for people who want to code, people who want to implement the IOTA network. So the white paper, it's made to have precise instructions on how things are built on the IOTA network. So that's the main difference between them. So you could say there is difference on precision, on a difference on target public. So the yellow paper should be full of pseudocode, precise definitions, talking more about communication ports that will be used and things like this, talk how more to set up a node and things like this. So it has a different target public. The white paper is more general. But I'm going to be honest with you, I learned about the yellow paper when someone said that our specifications would be a yellow paper in some sense. So Also, is a new term for me also, as a mathematician especially, but that's basically it. We have a different target public, we have a different level of technicality and instructions.
Okay, so I'm gonna do you the last question, Darcy.
Sure.
Then we are ready. So the last one says, could you elaborate on the problems with the distributed random number generator and your solution to this obstacle?
Okay, maybe we should get another question, because for this, I'm not part of this group. I know
Okay.
there was a council based on mana, but I will just say we have a video on YouTube on the specification videos about the decentralized random number generator.
I saw that.
So if you want to learn about our solution, I would say go there. I know that it's committee based. I know that we have side solutions that's gonna be going when the first one fails. I know more details, but I think there you're gonna have a much better understanding than if I talk here briefly.
Okay, so I think I have covered all the questions. If I didn't, please guys, let me know in the chat. I didn't know about the video. Okay, so the guy that did the question is saying that he did not know about the video. So I think that's it. It was an amazing talk, Darcy. I know that you're very clear when you explain stuff. Guys, if you wanna ask something else tomorrow, whenever, you can go to Taggle Math in Discord. Darcy is there. Or
just ping me.
Yeah, totally. So thanks a lot, Darcy, for being here, and thanks a lot to everyone. Despite the late time, you guys are here again. And I do not know yet who we will be having the next week, but I'm gonna let you guys know as soon as I know. So thanks a lot, guys. And thanks, Darcy.
Thanks very much, guys. And thanks everyone for watching. It was great to have you all here. It was great to present everything. See you next time.
Bye, thanks.